Greetings. I'd like to introduce the field observation activity that you will be starting shortly. If you recall from some of our readings, naturalistic observation is one of the core components to much social scientific research, as well as natural sciences as well. Simply watching the other. Charles Darwin spent a lot of time looking at animals, and looking at natural thing in the field. This field observation is kind of an introduction to that whole array of methodology and technique, introducing you to watching others like that. We'll address learning outcome 6, this ever-increasing competency in qualitative techniques that you are building in this class. So being able to make a field observation, analyze the data, take notes about that, write up a report, those are basically the skill sets that we'll be working on. For the class, you'll need simply access to Google Docs, and this course here in Canvas. Ignore these due dates that I have here. That's for a previous class. Be mindful of this important lesson from the field from Bailey's chapter 8. That's our course text. And if you don't recall, basically it says it's best to do your write-up from the field in the same day. Do your observation, and ideally right after that, or within that same day, write those notes up. Naturally, we just lose a great deal of the details of something we see. That's often when police, after a crime, they want to get to you as soon as they can because they're aware of this neurological fact. The objectives, as I said, practice our observational skills, develop the note-taking, and the only way to develop note-taking is to practice. You just have to develop your own skill that works for you and then keep relying on that. And the big point here is this distinguishing between an objective observation and an inductive hunch that you have. You think something's going on here, but you really didn't see that evidence empirically to getting that hunch. So gaining a familiarity of these two skills and balancing the two out. So when you have a hunch, don't say the hunch is a fact and you saw it. Say, I saw these points and I think this supports my hunch hypothesis of what's going on. And as well, the fourth point, to get, generalistic conclusions about, what you think's going on or how you think it could improve as well. You don't have to stress this fourth point because, again, this is a practice exercise of a very small nature. So you got to find a place to study. It's a place you're going to hang out for an hour or two. So make it a place that's comfortable for you to be there, comfortable for the people that you're there with to, allow you to be there. And so, public areas are the best place to go, places where people can group and eat and stuff like that. Restaurants or public malls like food courts or coffee shops and things like this is a place where people often go. So the actual requirements for the assignment is, again, to do, to observe for an hour and a half, and write notes, write your field notes and stuff. And then finally, write those observations up into a Word document, the Google document or the Word document. I guess that should be a Google document. It's a typo there. 5 to 7 pages, double spaced, is the norm of what I usually receive in terms of how this translates. As well, these are not your raw notes. Your raw notes were separate to that. Include a title page. That's the next point here. I forgot to point that out. So telling me who you are, of course, all the common sense stuff. You are starting this observation with some sort of research question. This can be the broadest, vaguest question. If you're observing, food court, lunchtime in a food court, your research question could be, how do people behave during lunchtime at a food court? It could be as vague and broad and general as that. Again, we're not trying to prove anything here. It's more about the technique and not the actual findings of the research. Tell me briefly where it was that you were. Keep in mind, you're more than willing and encouraged to keep it anonymous. So you can say a food court in a mall, in wherever, Castaic or Los Angeles, Fresno, or wherever it be. And this is the point I was mentioning earlier. Include your field notes. If you took field notes by hand, some people, take them, just write them in ink in a little book or on a sheet of paper. All you got to do is take a picture of that and add it to the file. If you take them, if you type them out like I do, I take my computer everywhere now and I type field notes naturally. I've just gotten into that habit. That's not right or wrong. That's just my process. Then you can just include that as an attached document to the assignment. Then this write-up, the analysis itself. What were your findings? What did you find? What did you learn from this, from doing the observation? And what did the data tell you? This sort of thing. Now, I'm going to be judging it, grading it, as it were, based on was the context and the research question appropriate? Was the level of detail appropriate? This, in a sense, is a real important one that, like I said earlier, the more empirical your observations can be, what did you actually see? Not as much what did it mean, or at least some people do this. In fact, how I write notes on a computer, I type out what I see, and then I write a bracket, brackets, not parentheses, of what I think it meant, my interpretations. Other people, in a more classic way, if it's on a sheet of paper, they, might just have the observations on one side, what they saw, and on the other side, what they think it meant. Fact, opinion, observation, interpretation. It's really significant that you can separate those things out from each other. And that is an important side effect of this study. When I'm looking at your papers, that's a really important thing that I'm looking for. Are you able to distinguish between these two things? Very, very well, because you don't want to mix these two up. What you think it means versus what it means are important distinctive features. Then describe, the nature of your observation. I'm sorry, the descriptive. If in terms of the narrative account, do I feel like I really was there? That's an important thing. This is the point I just iterated. A clear distinction between observation and induction, is the kind of point that I'm getting at. Do you very clearly separate the two out from each other, your fact and opinion? Also, I'm looking for some level of analysis. Does it make any sense, to your general question? Did you respond to it? And that sort of thing. I have an example of a paper here which was kindly shared with me by a previous student who did this assignment. You can look at that as well. I've got a great breakdown of the grades and everything here a little lower. But I don't want to belabor this video. In terms of the assignment itself, if you go to the assignments page, all you end up having to do is, go to field observation and basically start right on the objectives, and find a location. Thank you. I hope you enjoy this assignment. All the best.